Hey, George McGovern, thanks for being willing to try something a little different here today. I just don't wanted to take a moment and explain something to you, and I felt this would be a much quicker way than trying to have several different meetings. Starting on Monday, the new quarter, we're going to launch a new system for tracking our data on interventions, and I want to introduce you to that, and I want to do a little review of what the data collecting form will look like, so that way if you're getting questions from the interventionist, you don't have to be maybe offended, or you don't have to be curious about why they're asking certain questions. You can really understand where that data is coming from. First, I just want to show you the new data collecting system. It's called Swiss. We're not going to spend a lot of time looking at this. Not every teacher will have access to this, but every team will have access to it. It's just a basic system for collecting data, so we'll be able to enter our specific referrals. We'll be able to enter a lot more information than like an Infinite Campus will let us enter, because what we will be able to do is we'll be able to check out the corrective strategies that were used. We'll be able to put a lot more specific or specific locations, like where in the halls. We'll really look at maybe the motivation and why we think the behavior is happening. It's a great program for letting us report out all sorts of things. We can start to identify the problem behaviors we're having. We can look at specific students. We can look at specific times of day. There's all sorts of things. There's also an option where we can do a data dig and really dig down for specific things we're looking at. But again, there's just a quick visual what this looks like. If you just Google PBIS Swiss, there is like a module that you can check out and just navigate and see some of the things it can do. So before I show you the data collecting form, and again, you won't necessarily be filling this form out, but I want you to see the form because our interventionists and myself and Mr. Knoll, Mrs. Emanuel will be coming and asking you guys some questions, and want you to kind of understand where those questions are coming from, and to know that those questions really aren't about questioning you or questioning what you did. It's really about finding out about what's going on, so that we can look into things and make some decisions as a school to figure out how to organize things best, create our procedures and our expectations so that we're helping kids navigate the day well. So before we do that, though, I just want to tell you the goal that I have for data collecting, and it's important that we understand the goal. The goal for us is when we collect this data and we look at what's happening with students, it's going to be to reflect on trends in behavior that help us as the George McGovern team develop plans that will help students learn necessary skills and decrease negative behaviors. All right. The main reason I want to share what the goal is because I also want you, and this is a little out of order if you come down here, it's also important to know what it's not. We're not going to use the Swiss system as a zero tolerance system. A zero tolerance system is basically where 1, 2, 3 strikes, or you get 2 of these sorts of office referrals and this happens to you. Another thing that we're probably not going to use the system for, we're not looking to collect data to build a case against a student to make sure they get placed somewhere else. Sometimes the data might be used for that and might be helpful for that, but the purpose isn't for building a case against students or to get some sort of action taken. That's not the primary purpose of collecting it. The other purpose of it is not making it accessible so that we can discuss if the punishment that was given to a student was tough enough. It really, just very truthfully, we're moving away from a zero tolerance system and a punishment based system, and we're moving much more towards a restorative and a preventive system. So what we do want to do is come up here to the main points. And what we want the data to do is to help us identify these questions that we talked about when Jeremiah led us through in-service, like who are the students that are struggling, what are the behaviors they're struggling with, where are these behaviors taking place, maybe why are these behaviors happening, when are these behaviors happening, and then this one to me right here is the most important, which is what action are we going to take? So not what is this student going to do, what are we going to have somebody else do, but what are we as a school or a team of teachers going to do to really help prevent the behavior or change the behavior or address the behavior. And when we're looking at this, really looking at it globally, I think one of our strengths as a school is we look at specific students, and sometimes that strength though can cause get us in a spot where maybe we have 8 different individual plans because this student is being late for class and this student's being late for class and this student is disrupting the class. And what we want to do first though is we want to really look globally, because sometimes maybe it's just our procedures and some tweaks we can make as a group and how we function and how we run our day, and that will take care of maybe the individual that's really causing us some difficulty, and it will take care of a lot of other individuals that are having some difficulty to help us decrease some of the negative behaviors we see. So we really want to use this to be proactive. We want to use this to bind together and come together as a staff to develop plans and ways of approaching our students to help them learn the social skills that they need, and to be able to navigate the day and to decrease their behaviors that are negative. So let's just take a quick look at the form so you have an idea of what it looks like. If you want to just follow my cursor here, obviously we'll get a lot of this information. You're not asked every one of these things, but it'll give us the name of the student, the grade, it'll give us the person or the teacher who's referring them. The great thing about this system is we can actually put substitutes in, or individual substitute names, so you won't get credit for discipline things that happen inside your classroom when a sub's there. And we can look at trends if we have specific subs that struggle more, that we might need to provide some more supports to and help out. But the date, the time, the day of the week, because we want to look and see if there are certain trends on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, different things like this. Obviously the location, this stuff will be just kind of known to us, so you probably won't get asked a lot of questions about it. One of the things that I want you to really be mindful about when you call an interventionist is to be able to just answer this question, and we may have to add some of these areas as we move along and as we learn, because we're testing the system to see if we want to use it for next year. But we want to think about what's the antecedent. What were you asking the student to do when the behavior happened? Were they having to work in whole group? In other words, when you were direct teaching, lecturing, something like that? Was it when the students were supposed to be entering or exiting the class? Was it during a transition time from one activity to the next? Was it when they were supposed to be working individually? Was it when they were supposed to be free reading, software time? We may need to add a couple things here, but we want to, this will help us start identify, is there certain activities that maybe our students struggle with, or even when we do happen to be looking at an individual student, that individual student struggles with. So again, we can accommodate, make a plan, and help that student be successful. We will just label the behavior. So we've just broken this up here to staff managed behaviors and office managed behaviors. Basically, we're already doing this. Staff managed behaviors are the things that we're typically doing an intervention for. The office managed behaviors is a decision of that interventionist or a decision of the principal when we send it up towards the principal, because they're going to put it in infant campus and do more of a traditional office referral. The traditional office referrals will go into Infinite Campus because we need to stay in line with our district. However, they'll also go into this system, so we'll really get a true picture of total incidents, which ones are major, which ones are minor, be able to compare those. Here's another really important part. If you see my cursor here, I'm going to actually even just highlight it for you. This is a super, super important part that we want to start tracking. So the interventionist might ask you, like, what do you think the motivation was? And I know in the moment you could be really stressed out, or you could be really angry about the situation, but you might have to just think a little bit, like, were they trying to avoid an adult? You know, they don't like the adult and they were trying to just get away from the adult, get kicked out of the room, avoid peers. Were they trying to avoid the task or the activity you asked them to do? Were they trying to get an adult's attention or a peer's attention? This is a little bit subjective, but we really want to start thinking about what's their motivation? What are they attempting to get out of this situation? Because if we can learn that, then maybe we can create a plan that helps them get what they want and get the needs that they feel that they need to have met, but get those met in a positive way. We'll just also the interventionist will just know this from your account, who else was involved, peers, other staff, substitute, other, just so we can see if there's certain combinations of things that don't work well when we're planning. And then you'll see here there's the intervention minor. So this will most often be selected when a student's just been disruptive and things like that. Office referral major is when it's that principal referral. And here you see staff corrective strategies. We're going to still be asking you about those corrective strategies. Please, when we ask you about the corrective strategies, sometimes I get a sense that people feel like we're doubting you or we're questioning what you did. It's really to gather data. We want to know what corrective strategies do we use, which ones do we use more often. That helps us get better at the ones that we don't use as often. So there's a temptation when we say, hey, what did you try with the student, to say, I tried all kinds of corrective strategies. Well, excellent. If you could at least just name a few of them that you did and be thoughtful of those, that helps us collect the data, what we did. Over here are staff consequences. Many of you out there have been issuing a consequence when you're trying to navigate that behavior in your classroom. So you may ask the student to come in and stay after school with you and complete the work that they missed when they were being disruptive. You may ask them to come into your room during lunch or during directed studies or some other time. We're just going to mark and track data when the actual teacher or the actual EA or whoever's working with that student issues a consequence. Of course, when the teacher or the EA issues a consequence, we really expect them to kind of fulfill that consequence. And then we will continue to track the corrective strategies that the interventionists are doing to calm the student down. And we will continue to track the consequences that are given by the interventionist. Now, all this is the same things that have been going on. There's only a few additions to what we've already been collecting. So most of this information is the same information we're collecting. We're just putting it into a system that's going to crunch the data, show us the data, give us some reports to look at when we're looking at the data that can be more helpful. Obviously, we'll take down the student account, we'll take down the teacher account. If I can speak to the teacher account just a little bit, obviously we want the teacher account to be very specific and very accurate. That does not necessarily mean it needs to be very long. When you send an email, and what I would say is you can send your account to Kevin Kennedy anytime. If we're able to get it from you on the fly, we'll just write your account for you, but you can give a bulleted account. Just be specific about the actions of the students, but we don't necessarily need 4 or 5 big long paragraphs to get that those specific actions. So be specific, but specific doesn't mean super long. Besides that, we have a place here where we'll track additional information. So if we're looking at a student and we're looking at their reports, we can see some of the things like, was there a fight in their home the night before? Did they forget to take their meds? What were some of the other factors that might have contributed to that? All right, well, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. Again, you won't be completing this form, but you'll just understand why you're asking some questions. I want to come back up again to the goal of this. The goal of this is so that the George McGovern team, us as a school and you as individual teams, can develop plans that will help students learn the necessary skills to decrease negative behaviors. We want to keep this as our major goal right here. So it's super important that this tool is used in our well-managed philosophy of student behavior, and not that it's necessarily a tool to go maybe back to our former way of doing things, which was more of a tracking system, a zero tolerance system. How many disruptions have you had? That leads to an SAS, that leads to an OSS. We're really moving more to a problem-solving model, a restorative model. How do we help the students? Obviously, in helping them, sometimes we issue a consequence and there's discipline, but we really want it to be discipline. Discipline comes from that word disciple, which is a student, and that is much different than punishment, where punishment is maybe just making the student pay and be frustrated for all the frustration they caused us. So I'm really excited about this. I hope this helps you understand why maybe you're getting asked the questions you're getting asked. It's not because we question anything you're doing in the classroom. We really want to collect the data, and then from that data we can use that as a mirror to reflect on what we're doing, make any changes that we can make so we can have really successful classrooms, real successful students, and I think it'll really even help us as teachers minimize some of the frustrations we experience for the day. Well, I appreciate you giving me these 15 minutes, and I hope this system worked well for you. If it did, we might continue to get some information out this way. That way you can do it on your own time. Thank you.